on retirement and saving for the future. My name is Taylor Bingham. I'm the coordinator for Career and Employment Services. We also have Miranda with Student Life, and then Roman Fox, a financial educator with Education Credit Union. Please if you're live, please put your ID in the chat box to all panelists, so that way you can get put into a drawing for a gift card. So that's pretty cool. So go ahead and put that ID in there so we can keep track who is here, and we can contact you so that way you can find out if you won a gift card for being here today. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Roman. If you have questions, please put those into the chat box as he's chatting, or you can put them in the Q&A, wherever floats your boat. We will be more than happy to answer your questions. If you have additional questions after, or if you're watching this retroactively, you can contact Student Life, Career Services, or Education Credit Union, but we'll make sure that we get you to the right spot to get your questions answered. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Roman. If you have questions, please put them in the chat box. Thanks, y'all.
Okay, perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, but I think the host may have to enable me to do that so I can get my presentation up. But yeah, like Taylor said, my name is Roman Fox, and I am a financial educator, not the financial educator, at Education Credit. And just to make sure, can you guys see my screen? Taylor, Miranda, is it good?
You're good, yep.
Okay, sweet, awesome, wonderful. Okay, yeah, and so today we're going to be talking about saving for the future, and we're going to talk about a lot of things. Now, when we talk about savings, there is so much involved with it, and definitely not enough to fit in 1, 2, or even 3 sessions. But we're going to do our best, and we're going to touch on a couple of things. And then, yeah, like Taylor said, if you guys have questions, I think Miranda might be monitoring that, and we'll have the chat pulled up, and I'll be able to answer those questions to the best of my ability. So, to get started, we're going to look at just kind of the 3 things that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about budgeting, and yes, budgeting is absolutely important when talking about savings. The one thing that you can't run away from is a budget. When you're talking about credit or paying off debt and saving or spending, it all comes down to budgeting. So yes, we're going to talk about that. We'll also talk about goal setting and how to do that in an effective way. That way we can reach our goals quicker. And then the third is we're just going to get into different kinds of savings, different savings like emergency funds, setting goals, long-term savings like retirement and all stuff like that. So to get started, we have to talk about budgeting. Budgeting is at the foundation of every thing financial literacy wise. We want to spend better and avoid living paycheck to paycheck. It starts with a budget. We want to pay off our debt or save up enough money to buy a car with cash. Starts with a budget. We want to save for retirement. It all starts with a budget. So there is a theme here. It's budgeting. It's at the foundation. And so the first kind of 3 things, and again, this isn't a presentation over budgeting, but it's super important. The first step, which is just income. You have to know how much money that you're making. And this is that after-tax income. So once you have that starting point of how much money you're earning, then you can move on to the next step, which is how much money you're spending or your expenses. And it's important to distinguish between those really important expenses, like the ones we can't avoid, like our bills and our utilities and things like that. And then there's the other expenses are a little bit more flexible, like our Starbucks expense or, going to Barnes & Noble, buying books or video games or going out to the movies, all that fun stuff. And then the third step is just to have a game plan and write it down. And so once we have that budget in place, then we can start looking at saving and setting our eyes more towards the future, because right now our budget's working for us. And with savings accounts, a budget is kind of like a roadmap. Now, my wife and I are going to be taking a vacation pretty soon, and we obviously need a map to go on our vacation. We're going to Arizona, so that's exciting. And so to do that, we need a map. And with a roadmap or on your phone or a GPS, there's a couple of things that comes with. It starts with the starting point, where you're starting at, and then it tells you your destination. And the third one is that nice blue line that gives you the route. And that route is the most effective, quickest way to get to your destination. And that's exactly what a budget is. A budget is like a roadmap. First of all, it tells you where you are. And so if you look at your income and your expenses, and if you notice you're overspending in some areas, that's your starting point. And then you can adjust that accordingly. And then you have your destination, which is your endpoint. And that could be any type of things. That can be, short-term, long-term savings goals. That might be moving out into a new apartment. That might be purchasing a new vehicle or paying off debt or whatever it may be in your situation. And then that nice little blue line, that's that budget that helps us get there and gets there quickest. Right? We can just try to wing it without a budget and save as much as we can here and there. But I guarantee you, if we have a game plan, like a budget set in place, we will be able to reach our goals much, much quicker. So to kind of look at a basic example, this is where we should be spending our money for our budget. And so a lot of these are going to look a little bit different. And I guarantee you, if you make a budget on your own, it will look completely different than what this is. This is just kind of a food for thought, good thing to look at, and good numbers to kind of reach or go around. So for example, we'll just go through it real quick. The first one, which is the largest portion, is your housing. That's 25% of your income should go to housing. And that's just housing. That's not including utilities. The next two, which are the largest, are transportation and planned savings. And that's the one we'll hit on today. But with transportation, that's everything from your car payment, your insurance, your gas, your maintenance, your oil changes, all that fun stuff. And that's 15% of your income. And if you notice, planned savings is also 15%. So this is a good convicting moment, right? Introspective moment, taking a look at our lives and where we're spending our money. A good rule of thumb is, are we saving as much as we're spending on our vehicles? Right? So that's a good moment to ask ourselves this question. Am I saving, putting money in an emergency fund, reaching my goals, or saving for retirement as much as I spend on my vehicle? And the answer is, if the answer is no, then this is where a budget can help you, right? Because we can readjust, reprioritize where we're spending our money and really focus on those goals that we want to achieve in our lives. And then moving on down the pie, we have food, medical insurance. Those are pretty self-explanatory, utilities. And the next one, that tan line, which is installment payments. That's just a fancy word for debt other than your car loan or your house. And so that can be an example of credit card debt, student loans, maybe a furniture loan, things like that. And then in the purple one, we have giving, and that's pretty self-explanatory as well for religious organizations, charities, nonprofits, all that fun stuff. And the last two, which is everyone's favorite, and that nice like magenta color, that pink one, discretionary, this is the fun one. This is like entertainment. This is kind of like your allowance. Like, when you were a kid, some of you guys might have had an allowance where your parents would give you 10, 20 bucks. This is your allowance when you're an adult, because this is what you can do anything with it. This is your Starbucks money. This is grab a burger at McDonald's or a book or go catch a movie. So the discretionary is 5%. Now, that's pretty small. But even smaller is clothing, and that's 2%. So if you look at it, kind of in a nutshell, 7% of your budget should go to fun stuff, right? Entertainment, clothing, all that good stuff. So this is also another introspective moment where we ask ourselves questions. Are we spending and living our life within our means? And that means just pretty much means, are we living in what we can afford? Can we afford the lifestyle? And this budget allows us to recorrect or readjust if we are not. So before we talk about savings, we have to talk about the budget and that game plan. Because if we don't have a game plan, then we're not going to be able to reach our goals quicker or in a more efficient or effective timeline. So that's budgeting at the first. Let me see if we have any questions in the chat. I do not think so. Let me pull over here. Nope. Okay, we're good so far. Okay, so the next step is goal setting. This one's pretty self-explanatory because everyone has goals. But what we're going to do is take a look at how we actually create those goals. And we at Education Credit Union use this acronym SMART. And it pretty much just stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. And so if there's a goal that you have in mind, anything in life really, but a specific financial goal or a savings goal, you want to put it in the lens of a SMART goal. And what that means is we put it through this, and this really will allow us to see if this goal is a need or if this goal is a want, and if we can actually achieve this goal, if it's relevant in our life, all that good stuff. So I'm just going to use a basic example. And the example that we like to use is just purchasing a car. So let's say the goal that we may have is to buy a vehicle. Now that's a pretty good goal, but the first letter in SMART is S, and that's specific. So we're going to specify exactly what we want to do. So in this instance, we will say, I want to purchase a vehicle that's worth $5,000. So that's specific goal. So let me move on to the next letter, which is M, which is measurable. Now, how are we going to measure us achieving this goal? Now, since it's a financial goal, all right, we can easily see that just by having a savings account. And once our savings accounts reaches that amount, we can then purchase it. right? Or if we're going to, get a loan and then have a down payment for that vehicle, we can measure that as well. So financial goals with the SMART goal is pretty easy, especially with the M in measure, because we can visually see that our dollars are going up and up and up, and then we can achieve our goal. The next two, attainable and relevant. So this one is a get real moment. So a lot in finances, we can fake it until we make it. But in reality, we can fake everybody else, but we can't fake ourselves. So we have to be real. And so this is the moment where we ask ourselves these tough questions. The A, attainable. Can I reach this goal? Can I save $5,000 to buy a vehicle? Or is that impossible for me in my current life? And now, just because it may not be possible now, doesn't mean that it's going to be that same in the future. So sometimes we may have to look at a goal and think, okay, not right now, but maybe later. Maybe when I graduate, when I have my degree or my certificate and I'm in my career and I'm a professional and I'm working and this is the dream that I want, then maybe I can come back and address this goal because I can achieve it then. And the R is relevant. This one's also important. Does it matter? Is it worth it? So this can also be hard, especially, and coming to our example with the $5,000 vehicle loan. Let's say you already have a vehicle. You have a car that works fine. It gets you from point A to point B. It may not be the fanciest car or your dream car, but it works. And so if you already have a vehicle or even a mode of transportation, whatever that may be, do you absolutely need to save up X amount of money to buy a new vehicle? And if you think, okay, yes, I absolutely need this vehicle, it's worth it, then that means that goal is relevant. But if it's not, then we have to nix this goal and start over with a new goal that's more applicable and relevant to our life. And the last one, T, is time-based. This one's also important. We have to set a time limit and a timeline on our goals. So we could just say, I want to save $5,000 to buy a vehicle. Now, that's a specific goal. We can measure that. It may be attainable in our life for the income that we earn, and it's definitely relevant because we all need modes of transportation. But we have to put a time limit on that, a timeline. We have to give ourselves, I'm going to achieve this goal in this amount of time. So for example, we could say that in 3 years, I'm going to save $5,000 in cash in my savings account so that I can buy a vehicle without getting a loan. So that gives you a time limit, and that forces you to focus more and achieve that goal quicker. And then going back to budgeting, that budgeting allows us to have this T time-based and achieve it more efficiently, right? So for example, that $5,000, that example we were talking about in 3 years, that comes out to maybe about $110 a month. So if we look at that timeline and say that our timeline is 3 years, we also have to go back to attainable. Can I reach my goal within that time limit I've given myself? So if you earn an income and if you budget and if you are saving and are able to save, $110 or whatever it may be for your specific goal, then yes, this goal is still attainable. But if not, if you say, oh no, that's way too much, or I'm only working seasonal in summers and when semesters are over, then yeah, that time limit may have to change. Or good news, maybe you're saving more than that time limit and you can move it up a little bit. Instead of 3 years, you can do 2 years or 1 or whatever is applicable for your life. So if you have your smartphone, take a picture of this little graphic, SMART, or Google it later, because every financial goal that we have should be put up to the test of a SMART goal. And this is anything. This is starting to save for an emergency fund. This is saving to pay off debt. This is, even saving enough money to pay for your next semester of tuition or even for retirement. Is it a SMART goal? Can it be specific? How can you measure this goal? Is it attainable in the time limit you've given yourself? Is it relevant? Does it matter? Is it worth it in the long run? And lastly, give yourself a time limit. Set a time frame so that you can stay within that and motivate yourself to do so. Okay, so that's the second thing we're talking about is goals, SMART goals. Remember, take a picture of this or write it down or Google it later because this is very, very important, especially with the next section that we're going to be talking about, which is the basics of savings. So first of all, we have to find your why. Why do we save? Why are you saving? Is it because you want peace of mind? Right? You don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. You don't want to have to worry how I'm going to, pay this bill or go to the grocery store and have enough money to buy food. Is it to be debt free? Maybe you're accruing debt, or if you have, student loan debt or credit cards or whatever it may be, is that your why? Or is it maybe just more fun? I just want to travel. I want to see the world or see the country or whatever it may be. Or is it to retire early? This is where you have to have those conversations with yourself. And then specifically in savings, you have to find your why. Why am I doing this? Write that down, put it in your phone, memorize it, because this is going to be the motivation. Because when we get into savings, like short-term or long-term savings, it's going to get difficult. It's going to be hard. There is no easy way to save. If there was an easy way to save, we'd all have $1 million in our savings account. But it's not, because life happens, right? Curveballs happen. All right, one massive curveball no one ever expected was a global pandemic a year or so ago. And now we're reaching, or I've already surpassed that 1 year mark. And we're looking back and thinking, holy cow, what has happened? How are we still here? So that's a good example of an unexpected moment in life that could really curb or put a hold on our savings, which it did for millions of people. A lot of people lost their jobs, or they went from 2 incomes to 1 income, or whatever the situation may be. And so their savings had to be put on hold. So life's going to get hard, right? It's not going to be easy. And when it does get hard, this is where we can come back to and find our motivation. Okay, this is why I'm saving. I'm saving because I want peace of mind. I don't want to worry where I'm going to, get the money to pay for my groceries, or for my kids' daycare, or for utilities, or whatever it may be. Or that's right, I'm doing it because I want to be debt-free and have that relief, or to travel, or to retire early. Once we find your why, that's that motivation that we can return to. And it takes time. It takes time. Like I said, it's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would be millionaires. It takes time. So be patient, which is one of the hardest virtues to practice, really. But be patient, right? It takes time. Sometimes we just have to start small. Save as much as you can. If you can only save $1 a week or $1 a day, that's fine. Start somewhere, because what we're doing is we're practicing those good habits. And that's really what savings is a good habit to have. Right? If I can put $1 a week, that's training my brain, that's training my spending habits to set X amount of money, in this instance, $1, into my savings account every week or every month. And then once you keep doing that and you have the opportunity to save more, like maybe $2 or $5 or $10 or $100 or whatever it may be, right? You're building those good patterns, because really scientists say it takes about 30 days to build a habit, to start or break a habit for 30 days. And so if you can do it for 30 days or for a month or maybe even 2 months, build those good habits and then start somewhere. And the first place to start is an emergency fund. Right? When we talk about retirement and we talk about paying off, debt, or saving up to travel or purchase a big ticket item, we have to do that in the lens that we already have an emergency fund. Because again, if last year told us anything, no one expects to have, job loss or a global pandemic that shuts down the entire, world, economic system. So having an emergency fund is important. And so where do we start? Again, start small. A good figure to shoot for, right, starting off an emergency fund, is just to have $500. Now, a lot of financial experts recommend that that's the baseline. Most unexpected costs or emergencies, like a trip to the medical or a hospital, you have a medical issue, or you need a tire in your vehicle, or something in your apartment or house broke and you need to fix it, $500 is usually the starting amount. So if you can have $500 in your savings account, just set aside for emergency fund, that's very important, just set aside for emergency fund, that's a good starting point. And then once you have that made, next step is only use that money for emergencies. Now, I'm not saying, oh my goodness, I must go to Dallas. This is an emergency because we're going to have fun and there's a concert. Or my emergency is this brand new pair of shoes came out, I really need it. No, our emergency fund is specifically used for emergencies, unexpected costs that we cannot avoid. Right? In case if we lose our job, we should have enough money in our emergency fund to maybe pay for some bills for a month or two until we can find a job. Or if our tires explode in our car, we need to have new tires, right? We should have a little money in our emergency fund set aside to fix those. So all that being said, the emergency fund should be separate from your savings account. You think about it as two different savings. My savings, which can be used for my, goals, short-term and long-term, and then my emergency fund, which is only used for emergencies. And then lastly, long-term, big picture goal is financial experts recommend that once you've built your savings account, a good, golden star emergency fund would have 6 months of expenses saved up. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that's a lot of money, right? That's anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 just sitting in an emergency fund just in case. Now, again, that's going to take a lot of time to build, and it's going to take a lot of years and a lot of patience, but that's the golden star emergency fund. But that's not where we start. Where we start is somewhere small. So remember, $500 is a good amount to have in your emergency fund. Again, just used for emergencies. And that's where our savings should start first. So before we talk about short-term or long-term goals, we need to make sure we have that emergency fund, that little nest egg set aside, a minimum of $500. That way, if anything happens, unexpected, we can pay for it through that emergency fund. The next one was just our basic savings account. Now, this is the one where we talked about kind of our SMART goals. This is those short-term or even long-term savings. Now, this is anywhere from saving up to buy a car with cash, or paying tuition for a semester of college, or going to travel, or buying new furniture, or whatever it may be. Now, that's for you to decide. What is your short-term savings goal that you can reach? And then we refer back to our budget. Remember that 15% of our income should go towards savings. And that's the recommendation. And so you need to decide, how am I going to split that up? All right. So for example, you could do 5% of your savings set aside for those goals that you want to reach with those SMART goals. You could have 5% set aside for emergencies. You could have 5% for retirement, for that long-term retirement that allows you to retire, early, or 60, 65 years, whatever that may be. But you need to decide what portion of that 15% is going where. And again, this is going to look different for every single person. One person might say, well, I have $0 in emergency fund, so that's going to be my first priority. Or one person may say, well, I've got enough in my emergency fund, and I'm going to focus more on my goals, or I'm going to focus more on my retirement. This is, again, where we have those conversations and figure out what is best for us, and let's stick to it. Okay, so now we get to retirement. And this is the fun one, because when we retire, a lot of times we think of not working, which that's exactly right. We aren't going to be working, but retirement is more than just not working. Retirement is living the life without the restrictions of a job or a 9-to-5 job. We can do the hobbies and the things that interest us. We can travel. We can visit family. Right? This is the freedom. So a lot of people think retirement is just stop working. Well, that's true, but it's also the starting of freedom. Right? This is where you're not tied down to anything. And so to get there, there's a lot of work we have to do. A lot of work we have to do. Now, when our taxes, and I don't know about you guys, but when we get our paychecks and we look at our different pay stubs and it says all the different deductions and taxes that are taken out, there's that little portion that's called your Social Security tax. Now, that tax the government takes and puts in, your Social Security, kind of like a savings or retirement account, so that when you are able to retire around 60 or 65 years old, you can use a portion of those taxes that you paid ever since you started working. Now, a lot of people think that Social Security that I'm going to get when I'm retired is going to pay for my bills. But in reality, that is nowhere near what you're going to pay. It may be able to cover your grocery bill and a couple of utilities, but it's definitely not going to be able to cover that brand new RV or that trip to Hawaii or whatever it is you want to go. So this is where we have to decide what we want to do and what kind of lifestyle we want to have. But before we talk about that, we also want to note that a standard savings account is not enough and is not the place to put your retirement savings. Because if you look at a savings account, we look at that interest that we earn, right? And that interest is just free money that we get from the bank by having our money with that savings account. And so if you think about it, a standard savings account is not going to pay very much money at all. Maybe, maybe pennies for every $1,000 that we have. Pennies for every $1,000 that we have in our savings account. So that's definitely not where we want to put our retirement money. So a couple of places that we could put our retirement money, which is a popular one, which is an IRA. And that's an individual retirement account. And the only restriction there is you have to be 18 years or older to open one. So once you're 18, you can open up an IRA and deposit money into that savings account and earn a higher interest rate than a regular savings account. But the problem with an IRA, like most retirement accounts, is you cannot touch it. Once that money is there in building that interest and in compounding that interest, it's there. Now, if you want to pull that money out, you're going to take a really big penalty because that account was not intended to be a regular savings. It was intended to be a long-term savings to where it's going to sit for 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40 years. That IRA is just sitting and building interest. So that's also the thing to look at is when you open an IRA, you're not going to be able to use that money until you retire, which is good because that's the money that we can use to do all the nice and fun things in our retirement, right? Like maybe buying an RV. That's what my parents want to do. They want to buy an RV and travel the country. Or for me and my wife, we just want to travel, go see the world. So that IRA can help us do that. Now, most careers or most employers offer a retirement savings that they can partner with you that's backed by stocks and bonds. Now, stocks and bonds can be pretty scary, especially stocks. If you look at the stock market or are focusing or just, even reading some of the stocks over the last year, the stock market is bouncing back. That's exciting, but it's taken a pretty big hit over this last year. So your 401k is a company sponsored retired savings account. And this is something where your employer and you may put money into that savings account. And again, like the IRA, you cannot touch it and you cannot withdraw it until you reach your retirement age. Or if you want to touch it, or if you want to use that money, you're going to take a pretty big penalty. But what's really great about a 401k or an employer savings account is that you can earn a lot of money in interest because it's backed by the stocks, like stock markets. Now, again, we have those unexpected moments in life where we have a global pandemic and economics, economy shut down and stock markets plummet and all that stuff. So yes, it is stressful, but the best advice that I've been given through retirement or 401k is just don't look at it. Deposit your money in your IRA, deposit your money in your 401k, and then just don't look at it. Because the more you look at it, the more you're going to get depressed and the more you're going to get excited, a lot of highs and a lot of lows. So we want to just keep that consistent with that 401k. So now we look at how much do we need. So a lot of resources are out there online, especially in Google. You can look up, online retirement calculators or lifestyle calculator and really figure out what kind of lifestyle you want to have in retirement. Now this looks a lot of things. This could be, like I said, traveling. Or this could be, building a cabin somewhere up in Red River or wherever the mountains you like, and just retiring there. But all of those are going to cost money. Now, financial experts say that the average, and this is just an average, right? You could live on much less or much more. The average amount to have in your retirement savings by the time you retire is $1 million. Now, that's a lot of money. $1 million is a lot. But if you look at it, the time that you're going to take to actually save up that $1 million is a lot. And there's also a wonderful thing called compound interest, which means you in your lifetime will not be contributing $1 million to that retirement savings account. What you contribute, maybe along with what your employer will contribute, is building interest. And not just any interest, compound interest, which means you're going to earn interest on the interest, on the interest, on the interest. So it builds. So this is the chart that we use to kind of help us take a look at the long term. Okay, so the first one is 20, and that stands for 20 years. That means you are 20 years old when you start depositing money into your retirement savings account, 20 years old. And if you want to retire at, let's just say 60 years old. So from the time you are 20 years old to 60 years old, that's 40 years. So you're going to be working in your career or multiple career fields for 40 years. What will you need to contribute to reach that $1 million goal? And the good news is only $117,000. Now that's, again, over 40 years. And if you divide that out and if you count in compound interest, that really comes out to only $200 or just over $200 a month that you need to be depositing into your retirement savings account starting at age 20. So again, if you're starting to deposit money into your retirement account at age 20, and you're going to be doing so from age 20 to age 60, to reach your goal of $1 million, all you have to put in is $200 a month. And over that 40 years, that comes out to $117,000, which means that remaining $900,000 plus is going to come from a portion of your employer and also a portion of that compound interest. Because what's so incredible about a retirement account, especially those 401ks that are backed by stocks, is the longer that account sits, the more time it has to build interest. And again, interest is our best friend. That is going to be that gap, that difference from what we contribute to what our long-term goal is. So again, the longer that account has to sit and build interest is the best. So again, if we start at 20 years old and start depositing money into our savings account to reach our goal of $1 million by the age of 60, we would only need to contribute a little over $200 a month. Again, that's consistently for 40 years. And that seems like a long time, especially those of us who are under the age of 30. 40 years seems like a long time, right? That's twice as long as we've been alive. But what's important to remember is referring back to all the things we've talked about so far, which is finding our why. Remember, what's our motivation? If that motivation is to retire early, or to travel, or to pay off debt, we have to go back to what motivates us. Because, though we may not like to think about it, the reality is we are in charge of our finances. We are in charge of our savings account. We are in charge of our spending habits, right? No one is forcing us to go to Starbucks every Friday or go to McDonald's every Wednesday morning and grab a sausage biscuit, right? This is us having to have those hard conversations with ourselves, figuring out what's the best situation that we can be in, look at those short-term and long-term goals, and motivate ourselves to get there. So yes, 40 years seems like a long time, but if you ask anybody who's already in retirement, they will tell you that it has flown by. And so for us, those of us who are younger and have that opportunity, it's important to start depositing money into your retirement account. If you don't have an employer that has a 401k, or if you're not in your career field yet, start with that individual retirement account or that IRA we just talked about, because that's a good starting point as well. Okay, so let's take a look at the numbers, maybe in a different lens. Let's say you start saving money when you're 30 years old. Okay, so 30 years old is when you finally decide to start saving money in your retirement account. So because you have a shorter amount of time, right, about a 10-year difference, now you only have 30 years to save, which again is still a long time. But if you have 30 years to save, you're going to have to contribute more. Because remember, with the savings account, with compound interest, the longer that savings account is there, the more opportunity it has to build interest. And that means the more money that you're going to get from interest. So we're taking off 10 years of this compounding interest savings account, and that means you're going to have to contribute more money. So if you start saving at age 30 and you want to retire at age 60, and remember, our goal is $1 million because that's what financial experts recommend, you're going to have to contribute $194,000 over 30 years, which comes out to about $500 a month, every month for 30 years. Now that's a big difference from just over $200. All right, that $300 difference, that's a car payment. Right, that's extra money to take, simple vacations down to Dallas or New Mexico or Colorado. All right, that's the difference between achieving your short-term goals or reaching your emergency fund quicker. So 30 years is still doable, right? 30 years of savings, that's easy. We can do that. But we're going to have to contribute more money to reach that goal. Okay, so now let's change the numbers a little bit. Let's say you start saving for retirement at 40 years old. The difference almost triples. It's insane because remember, our savings account works best the longer it is open and the longer it has to build interest. So if we want to retire at 60 and we start saving at 40, that only gives us 20 years, which means you're going to have to put in a whole lot more money to reach that goal. About $1,100 a month for 20 years amount of money. So some takeaways from this chart is that compound interest is your best friend. The longer you have that savings account, the more opportunities you have to build compound interest, to have that extra money in your savings account to reach your goal of $1 million or whatever your goal may be. Start young. That's the second tip. Start young. Start right now. Start when you can. Again, that IRA, almost every bank and credit union has an IRA that you can open. All you have to do is just be 18. And then you can start depositing money. And remember, that money stays there. Right? If you want to withdraw that money, you're going to take a penalty and you're going to have some pretty big fees, but that money stays there. So start young. If you want to have that $1 million goal in retirement, is you have to start young. So this graph may look a little intimidating, and especially some of the numbers that you might see on here might shock you and surprise you. But remember, when you're retired, you're not working. So you're not having those consistent paychecks that you were in your career. So you have to have some form of supplement. And that Social Security that you may earn in retirement is definitely not going to be enough. So there's extra money that you have to put in as well to be able to have that comfortable retirement that you want. So this is a chart to look at. And again, there's those calculators online, those different lifestyle calculators. All you have to do is just type in retirement calculators on Google, and you can figure out how much money you need to put into your retirement account every month until you retire to fit your lifestyle. Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about is how the little things that really can make or break our savings account. Right now, these are the things really most important, the little thing, which is not so little, but the big, which is our budget. Right, the little things, having a budget, making sure we have a plan for our daily, our weekly, and our monthly spending. Because again, that budget is like a roadmap. It allows us to see where we are, where we want to go, and it gives us the fastest route to get there. So the little things, have that budget. Find your motivation. What motivates you? Why are you saving? Why do you want to have these long-term or short-term goals? Right? Is it to have peace of mind? Right? Is it to avoid living paycheck to paycheck? Is it to pay off a car or debt? Is it to retire early or travel the world? Find your why. We have a couple of other tips. It's just shop smarter. And when I say little things, I mean little things like dollars. There's online price matching. All right, if you go into Walmart and if you find that this specific item is priced lower at another retail store like Target or Sam's or Costco, they may be able to match that price. And that could save you a couple dollars, maybe even $10 or $15. Use apps. All right, these are rebate apps. And what rebates apps now in the modern technology is where you can scan a specific barcode of a specific item and get money back using that app. My wife and I use Ibotta like crazy because what it does is we shop at Walmart and we can look on Ibotta. Now, it doesn't have every single thing you want, but they do have a large selection of items to choose from. And you can select which grocery item you like. And then once you put it in your cart, you can take a picture of that barcode after you buy that item, and then you'll get some money back. All right, so my wife and I, we've been married now for almost 6 years, and we got Ibotta 6 years ago. And so far to date, we have saved over $1,000 in rebates just using Ibotta. Okay, so when in doubt, Google Ibotta, figure out if this works best for you, and find those apps like even Retail Me Not. Right? I use this when I shop online for clothes. I'll go to this website first and see if there's a coupon or if there's a discount or if there's something out there that's going to help me cut corners. Because if we can shop smarter, this allows us to be able to increase our budget, save more, right? And have that more financially freeing lifestyle. And the last one, plan ahead. This is so important. Planning. Giving yourself those limits. I'm only going to spend this amount online on Amazon, or I'm only going to spend this amount when I go to the grocery store. We're only spending this amount on my vacation. Vacations are always really hard, right? Because we love to have a break and relax, and all of it can add up fast. Like I said, my wife and I are going to go on a vacation soon, and we have to pay for hotel and for food and for gas, and all those things can add up, and also fun souvenirs while we're there. But making sure that we plan ahead and setting that limit that we do not go over, this is again shopping and spending smarter. So those little things really matter and add up over time. Like my wife and I using Ibotta, I cannot scream highest on the mountaintops how amazing Ibotta is. Over the last 6 years of our marriage, we've saved over $1,000 using Ibotta. So please check out apps, and they're all over the place. And there's an amazing resource called Google where you can just search for coupons or other apps like Ibotta or Retail Me Not. And the last is resources. There are always resources out there that we can use. For example, a financial institution like Education Credit Union, right? Another financial institution may have those financial coaches, right? Or lenders or branch managers or people like Colton Hibbs and myself who go out and talk to people and coach on how to spend our money, how to save our money. Reach out to your financial institution because they're a resource. Family and friends. Now, this is one of those big taboos in the Panhandle of Texas, especially, right? We don't like to talk about money. We don't like to ask about money, but family and friends is an important resource to have, right? That's what they're there for. Now, we don't want to abuse that, but we do want to ask them for help if we absolutely need it. And the last one are programs. These are different programs that are out there in your community. I know for a fact Amarillo College has a ton of programs to help for living assistance, to help for paying for tuition or books or other things like that. Or if AC can't help you, they'll point you in the right direction of a nonprofit organization or a community resource where you can get help. There are always resources out there. All we have to do is just look and just ask. So when talking about saving for the future, wrapping up, there's a couple of things that I want to hit on. The first is budget. We have to have a budget. Budgeting, budgeting, budgeting. That's the cornerstone of a healthy financial lifestyle. The second is setting those goals, but specifically with a SMART goal, right? Using that acronym, hopefully you took a picture of or can rewind the video and go back and look at that. But set those SMART goals, right? Short-term and long-term. Right? And then figure out what is our savings priorities, right? I need that emergency fund. I may need some short-term savings goals soon, or even that long-term goals like retirement. And we should prioritize those long-term goals just as much as we prioritize those short-term goals. Because remembering back to that retirement chart, the younger we start saving, the less money we have to put in, and the more money that compound interest puts in for us. Those retirement savings work for you, and that's the best kind of savings. And then lastly, start small and focus on the little things, right? Take it day by day. Find your motivation, find what motivates you to save and to spend better, and then just do it. Because again, we're in control of our finances. We're in control of our spending habits and how we save, and all that together, it's going to take time and patience. We have to be patient with ourselves, and it's going to take time because again, things in life happen. We may have an unexpected job loss, or we may have, we may have failed that class, and now we have an extra semester that we weren't accounting for. That's extra money and extra time. Life happens. Don't focus on those failures or those small things or those hiccups or those speed bumps. Focus on the long term. Focus on the big picture, because again, we're in charge of it. So everyone, thank you so much for watching and listening to this presentation over saving for the future. I am going to turn it back to Miranda to see if there are any questions that you guys may have for me today.
Perfect. I do have one about the IRA accounts. Okay. So do you just go to your bank to open one?
Yes, it's really simple. You can actually even go online. So whatever financial institution you use, if you just go to their website and you can look your way through the accounts section or the accounts tab, they'll show you all the different retirement accounts they have. Or you can call, or you can go in and get more information. But what's really important to remember is that some banks may offer better interest rates than others. So again, look at how much of that free money you're going to earn from interest, because you may be able to get a better deal somewhere else. But yes, you can call, go in, or look online for those IRAs.
Perfect. And then, so what if you open up an IRA and then let's say when you turn 30, you get your dream job and it comes with a 401k. Should you keep your IRA or should you have two accounts open? Or
That's a great question. It all is going to depend on risk versus reward, right? Because an IRA is less risky than a 401k. Because if you look at it, a 401k is backed mainly by stocks. Now, some employers may structure their 401ks differently. And so that's something to talk with your employer about. But that IRA is something you're in control of, and it has more of a consistent, low risk interest. So if you are feeling a little bit risky, you can totally roll over that money from your IRA, and that is free to do that. There are no fees, no penalties. You can transfer your IRA over into your 401k or your company retirement savings account, and then you can earn more interest. But again, it's a little bit more risky. So that's something that you could talk to your employer about and just weigh those pros and cons. Because again, the IRA is less risky, a 401k may be a little bit more risky.
Perfect. And then the only other one I see, so if you have any questions, go ahead and add it to the chat. But for right now, the only other one I see is, do you have any budgeting apps that you recommend?
Oh my goodness, yes. Okay, everybody write this down. It's pretty simple. It's mint.com. That's MINT. Mint.com, like the breath mint, mint.com. It is phenomenal. All right, first of all, mint.com is backed up by Intuit, which is the same company that backs up TurboTax, which is a super secure. It's a security software system that protects your information. So mint.com is really safe, it's really secure, and it is amazing. My wife and I use mint.com. I cannot recommend this enough because what it does is you can actually tie mint.com to your checking account or your savings account. And mint.com will actually monitor your spending and send you alerts saying, well, Roman, stop going to Starbucks. Well, Roman, your electric bill is due pretty soon. Make sure you pay that recently. And you just fill out the information. And what's incredible is they give you step-by-step guide to create a budget. And they even have a goals section where you can write down your goals, and Mint will send you reminders saying, hey, you haven't contributed to this goal in a while. What's going on? How can we help? So it's really, really helpful. Mint, MINT.com. That's the one that I would recommend.
Perfect. That sounds great. I don't see any more questions at the moment, but if you have any questions that pop up in your head later, feel free to reach out to Student Life or Taylor Bingham in Career Employment Services, and we will gladly ask Roman if he can answer those questions for us. But until then, thanks for coming. And Roman, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and good luck and happy saving.
Yep. Have a great day.